This is the Wait Just an Infosec podcast, your weekly opportunity to tap into the minds of some of the world's foremost cybersecurity experts. Wait Just an Infosec is a weekly show live streamed on SANS Institute social media channels on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. The show features a wide range of guests from across the InfoSec community. Whether we're diving into the weeds of the latest data breach or exploring the security implications of groundbreaking technology such as generative AI, each episode brings you new insight to keep you engaged in the industry, feed your fire for knowledge, and amplify your value as an InfoSec practitioner. Join the SANS community and gain free access to cutting-edge industry news, cybersecurity resources like technical research, and tools that can't be found elsewhere. Subscribe for free today at sans.org/join.
SANS Certified Instructor and Ransomware expert Ryan Chapman hosts this episode of Wait Just an Infosec, exploring tactics for defending your organization against ransomware and cyber extortion. Ryan welcomes his guest Brett Callow, threat analyst at cybersecurity solution provider Emsisoft, renowned in the ransomware community for building decryptors for many ransomware families over the years.
So what we're going to do now is invite my wonderful co-host for our feature segments, Mary DeGrazia, onto the stage. Hey, Mary, how you doing?
Hello. Good. I can't believe they didn't show Ice Cream Day. That is, I don't know about you, right? But Ice Cream Day at a SANS event is on the last day. And that is one of my favorite times because everybody, we all fight for the ice cream and to get our students out to the ice cream as quick as we can.
I take my breaks like 10, 15 minutes early. I'm like, go get in the line.
Oh, yeah.
Go, you make the line.
Business. It's serious business.
Sure. Well, tell folks what you're up to these days. Mary is an instructor for our Forensics 500 course, among others. What you up to?
Yeah, I am just out here in sunny Arizona, looking forward to Halloween. I'll be out in Florida teaching next week. I'm also at Zero Fox as the Director of Incident Response. So happy to be here co-hosting with you today, Ryan.
Awesome. Appreciate it. For anyone who hasn't seen us co-host before, Mary and I go back, I don't know at this point how many years, local conference in our area called Cactus Con that we've both been involved in for I don't know how many years now. So always great to have you on. Thanks for being here. Speaking of great to have someone on, we're going to invite in now Mr. Brett Callow. Can we get Brett onto the stage? Yeah. What's up, Brett?
Good morning, everybody.
Brett, where are you located ish? You don't have to geo-pinpoint yourself. What's that?
Vancouver Island.
All right.
West Coast, where it is still dark and the sun has not yet risen.
Oh, mine's just coming up now. So Brett is a threat analyst with Emsisoft. And in my course in 528, which Mary also teaches, by the way, we have a number of references to Emsisoft, including, I believe I have a quote, if not two quotes of yours. By the way, Brett, I don't know if you know that, but I do. So it's great to have you on. We always have on folks who are just pillars of the community when it comes down to it in the ransomware realm. So Brett, you're also an advisory board member of the Ransomware Harms Project. You want to give folks a quick little intro to yourself?
Yeah, as Ryan stated, I am a threat analyst with Emsisoft. We are primarily an endpoint protection company, but we are probably better known for our ransomware work. We, in particular, the creation of decryptors, we have created more probably than any other company, and they have been deployed in some fairly high-profile headline cases.
Yes, absolutely. I have a couple different references to your decryptors. We talk about sometimes in the class when a group will just go away and release some of their keys, like Avedon and other groups like that. And then we talk about cases where the group has to retool because someone comes up with a decryptor. And oftentimes it's because they decide to roll their own crypto, and maybe we can get into that a little further. But Brett, thank you for joining. If we can bring the question of the day onto the screen somewhere and fit it onto the board here, let's see, what do we have? So Mary, I'll let you start off. What catches your eye there?
The leadership buy-in, that is one that I, coming from an IT background myself originally, crawling underneath desks, working on printers, sometimes the security is just not seen as something that generates income for the business. And so it doesn't always get a high priority. I remember working a case once and showed up, and it was actually, our second or third time working with the client, and they're like, oh, we're not getting our bonuses again this year because we suffered a breach. And I was thinking, gosh, that's just terrible, because every time there's a breach, you give recommendations, you say what needs to be done, and then unfortunately you have to get that leadership buy-in in order to implement some of those things. And I just remember thinking, like, that is such a bummer. These people are working so hard, they want to defend their networks, they're not going to get their bonuses again, but they want to do the right thing, but they're just not getting that buy-in. So unfortunately, that is something that we see a lot of in this industry. I could really relate to that.
Definitely agree with that. I recently presented at the SANS Healthcare Forum a couple weeks ago, I think it was. And one of the big things we're trying to let folks know there is, patient care is utmost in healthcare. I mean, duh, right? And yet patient care is security, and security is patient care. Is what we're trying to get across. Brett, looking at the items on the slide here, what tickles your fancy? What's something you'd like to reference?
Leadership buy-in is absolutely critical in security, and without that, it is really impossible for things to move forward. And that has historically been a challenge. It's not a moneymaker, as already been said, and we need to try and devise ways to overcome that challenge.
I'm going to jump on the bandwagon here of leadership buy-in. You'll notice our participants, it's one of the larger items on the screen, and all three of us are like, hey, leadership buy-in is pretty important. I think I've seen numbers where it's like, 4% of the IT budget will be spent on security. And it's cute and it's easy for me as someone who's not, writing a check, so to say, to be like, no, 10% or more on security for sure. But, I'm not paying it. But at the same time, like, jokes aside, it's critical. And so many ransomware cases occur because of security 101. I'll just say it, failures. Oftentimes it's a security 101. What's security 101? Well, when you look on the screen right now, some of the other items we have here are the human risk. A lot of those can be due to just straight up phishing or other types of social engineering, including smishing, SMS-based phishing. You have incorrect configurations. A lot of times you'll have horrible configurations in an environment, and those aren't necessarily something that someone is doing purposely wrong. It's usually a mistake, right? An error, if you will. And then you've got patching. That one, oh my goodness. Over the years, there's a group called Coveware. I think I bring them up on just about every episode because their blog articles are they're strong with their statistics. And I have a lot of faith in their stats, particularly. And they have, over the years, you've seen software vulnerabilities start at a lower, it's phishing and remote desktop protocol as the infection vectors, primarily for ransomware. And then over the years, you see a shift where vulnerabilities are becoming more and more and more and more common. And it's not 0 days. It's not just 0 days. There are 0 days, sure. But there's so many things that we're seeing things that are, been out since 2000, since 2019, since prior to that, being used as initial access. And that's no good. That's no good. So, all right. Thank you, everyone who provided an answer to the question of the week, not the day, Ryan. And Brett, I just want to give you kind of an open platform to discuss our topic. So we have folks around the world who are finding themselves susceptible to ransomware. Unfortunately, I work, for anyone out there who doesn't know, I work incident response. So my job is to come in along with my team when the things go bad and we say, oops, let's fix that, and we do our best job, but there's still usually very, very big prices to pay, both emotionally and financially and so on and so forth. So Brett, what do you think are some of the most difficult things that folks are kind of facing in terms of defending their business, or for that matter, what are they not doing that they could be doing better?
Yeah, rather than talk about that, I would like to address things that we could and should be thinking about at a policy level. because I think defending our way out of the ransomware problem is always going to be extremely difficult. I'm not sure that we can ever really achieve that. We can certainly improve our defensive posture overall, but I'm not sure that is going to ever be good enough to get us out of the ransomware problem. To do that, we need better policy measures. And I think the starting point here is to acknowledge that our current counter-ransomware strategies aren't working. The problem is not getting any better. If anything, it's getting worse. Incidents appear to be up, ransomware payments appear to be up, and that is very bad news. I suspect that ransomware operators at this point in time are more constrained by their own resources, or lack thereof, than they are our defensive mechanisms. And they are getting better resourced all the time, which is very bad news. So how do we actually find our way out of the problem? I think that's key to this discussion.
Oh, you absolutely sold me. And I 110,000%, a little carried away, agree that I don't believe ransomware is ever going to be completely thwarted or go away. It's I personally believe it's going to be a thing where they always adapt, and people are like, just get rid of crypto. Well, first off, that's not going to happen. But let's just say that it does, right? They'll move to bad drops. They'll find a way to receive payments, and yeah, I'm with it. So when it comes to policy, what recommendations do you have?
Okay, I think the starting point is to think of this as less of a individual problem at the organizational level and more as a climate change-like collective action problem. Solving it requires everyone to do the right thing. And the right thing is not paying the cyber criminals as much as possible. I think the starting point for policy needs to be whether ransom payments should be restricted. At the moment, companies can largely pay them at will, and there is always considerable opposition to restricting companies' ability to pay ransoms. But we do already have precedent for this. OFAC places restrictions on who can pay ransoms and when, and there are restrictions at individual state level. North Carolina and I think Florida both prohibit public sector bodies from paying ransoms or even speaking to the cyber criminals. So can we extend that? Should we extend it? I think serious consideration needs to be given to limiting companies' ability to pay, especially where they have other means of recovery available to them. Paying a ransom to get a pinky promise from the bad actor that stolen data will be destroyed, for example, seems foolish. That's really quite irrational in my opinion. And similarly, paying because it's maybe the cheapest recovery option or perceived to be the cheapest recovery option isn't necessarily the right decision overall. To tackle ransomware, we need to limit the amount of money that's going into that ecosystem. And that does mean cutting down on the amount of money that's being paid.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point too. Another one that comes to mind is brand reputation, right? They don't want their brand getting a bad name because of what happened. And that to me, sometimes you got to think about that reason too. It's like, well, you did get compromised. Is that really a good reason to kind of keep this cycle going, is just to protect your brand? I think you bring up some really good points there on, when is it really necessary to make that payment?
Yeah, I also think that we need to expand reporting requirements. At the moment, we really don't have good visibility into whether ransomware is trending up, whether it's trending down, what the costs of it are, or even why attacks happen. When the FBI disrupted the Hive operation, they were able to see victims appearing in the system, and they were obviously able to tie that in with the reports they were getting from those victims. And only about 20% of people who were dealing with Hive incidents actually reported those incidents. So that means we really have very little visibility into what's going on. And without that visibility, how do policymakers know whether their strategies are actually working?
That's a scary figure, to be honest. I had to breathe for a second. 20%. No. We talk about oftentimes that speaking to threat actors could be barred, right? Speaking to threat actors in the initial days of like ransomware as a service was more of a public thing because it was very open. The chat communication channels and systems that they would use, which were often on their data leak sites or their blogs, were open, like open. And you could just see the various chats. And then they started doing things like protecting them with, something as simple as a passcode phrase, a hash, oftentimes, whatever it might be. And then now they're privatizing that a bit more, if I can use that term. And it's worrisome because anyone out there who comes to me and says, hey, what's going on with ransomware percentages? What's going on with payments? What's going on with attacks? I always have the, where do I go find the statistics? I always have the answer of like, look, wherever you go, wherever report you look at, you're going to see that report through the lens of the reporting agency, right? If my day job writes a report, if Emsisoft writes a report, you may have these, large, like a wide breadth of data that you have available in your pool, if you will, and you can report on that. Awesome. But no one has an answer as to the actual numbers. It's not a thing. It doesn't exist. And that's what bothers me. So to hear, I didn't know that, by the way, that the Hive, the correlation between reporting versus like what they're seeing like actually happened was 20%. That's scary. 1/5? Ugh. What if that's the same amongst all ransomware groups? I mean, even half, even only 50% is bad. When you have something like a public entity or financial entity that's tied to like SEC reporting and filing, that's very different. You have certain levels that are required to be reported and losses that must be reported. And then you have many other, I don't know how many times I've worked with just like a small healthcare facility that's not even 100 employees and sometimes 1 to 10, a dentist office or something that's hit by a decent sized name, I don't want to say big name, but whatever, ransomware group. And that's very, very worrisome. What do you, and if you can comment on this, because some folks, depending on their day jobs, ask certain questions, they're like, nope, next. Where do you go for your statistics, or what do you recommend people go for statistics? Does your crew have any type of report that you put out on your visibility and what you're seeing? Is there anything that you prefer, or do you, like me, find that you basically have to read them all and just kind of synthesize what they all say?
Yeah, it's a matter of reading them all and realizing that every company out there, their statistics are biased based on their customer base. Companies that deal with very large organizations are very likely to see totally different things to companies that deal mainly with smaller organizations. We actually track attacks on the public sector, working on the assumption that there's more visibility there, and it does represent it gives us a picture of what may be happening more generally.
I like that. Focus on the groups that that you hope you have more faith are going to report because of requirements. So I like that. What are your thoughts on the whole speaking to the threat actors thing. So I cannot make a blanket statement personally, and I'm pretty sure that you can't. Maybe you can't. Maybe you can. Or Mary, make a direct comment on you should or you shouldn't or whatever. But one of the things that I do mention is oftentimes these threat actors will tell you more than they might necessarily realize, or you might be able to obtain, for example, a file listing, or these days they're trying to sell the full file listings, which that's cute. So, but they'll give you a partial file listing. And then from there, be like, well, where do those files reside? And what network share? Is it a network share? What hosts had access to them? And then it helps you expand your incident response. And then on the other side of things, they might tell you things that you just absolutely didn't know at all. And you go, yeah, we knew that. And then you're like, go look over there. So it could be a positive, but you are engaging with criminals. I mean, that's what you're doing. So can you comment on that?
Yeah, I see no problem at all in speaking with them in that context. There is no harm that can come from it. And I think the states that have banned their public sector bodies from communicating with the threat actors have made a mistake. And there is no harm in speaking to them at all. And as you've already said, you may pick up valuable information.
Speaking of which, I'm going to share out a link. Well, I'm going to type it to my studio folks, and they're going to share it out. Give me one moment. There you go. It is for528.com/ransom chat. And it actually just links you to ransomch.at, the ransom chat viewer. And this is a site. There's a GitHub repo behind this site. And basically, it's a collection of some of the public, most are sanitized, not all of them technically, where you have communications with the threat actors. And there is, I'm looking for it right now. There's one of them in here. Here it is. It's from the Avos group, Avos Blocker group, dated in 2021. I don't want to screen share the actual site, by the way. I do just want to mention that in here, the threat actors often state if you pay them, that they will give you a report on how they got into your environment. I've seen many of those reports, and I'll just say right now, like, okay, cool story, like whatever. This particular one, though, if you do go to the site and you go to Avos, down towards the bottom, it looks as though maybe this particular victim did pay, because they give a breakdown of the things that they should be doing in their environment that they're not. And it is by far the most succinct, like best little example where they're talking about you should only have 2 to 5 administrator accounts and start with 2 users and force your users to use privileged access management. Use the protected users group. I tell that to every single one of my clients. I'm like, you're using protected users like right now? No? Okay, go do that right now. Put all of your accounts in there, right? The IT service accounts, administrator accounts, and things like, put that in there now while we're talking. They talk about taking out NTLM v1. They talk about CRED SSP. They give examples of patches to put into place. Everything in here is actually covered in my class. And I saw this and I was like, well, that's great. However, that's it. This is supposedly if you pay them, right? You're not going to get that level of like, here's how to protect yourself if you don't provide the ransom. And I'd like to go back to what you were saying on limiting abilities to pay. If we lived in a perfect world, we just wouldn't pay them, right? We did a debate here at SANS a couple of years ago now, and it was to pay or not to pay was the name of the webcast. It's on YouTube. And I got to play the debate the side of never pay. And I was like, yeah, don't pay. Just don't pay. If no one ever pays them, they'll go away. Done. Problem solved, right? But of course, we don't live in that perfect little world. So, Mary, what are your thoughts on general reporting stats you see out there, abilities to pay, learning from the actors? What do you think?
Yeah, so a couple of things I kind of wanted to talk about. And Brett, you'd mentioned, that there's never any harm in talking to them, but I definitely think there is an art There are companies out there that specialize just in doing negotiations. I know I was thinking about going to buy a new car and I'm terrible at negotiations. There's definitely a strategy that you need to take to the threat actors. A lot of times when we work with companies, they'll be like, okay, what are reasons, that we're going to take to them? You can tell that some of the threat actors that you negotiate with or talk to are more on the lower side of the food chain, if you will, and don't know as much. And, they're constantly having to go get their information in other places. So I am just always fascinated when I see some of these dialogues and the way that some people are able to talk to them and pull information out of them, in a really good way. And, Ryan, I have seen some of those reports as well. And I know on my end, when I author reports, we're taking that time, we're putting it through peer review. Everything that we put into a report, we know is solid and good. And, sometimes we read these reports and the clients will be like, I don't know what they're talking about. We don't even have a system with that name, or, that does not sound like it's coming from our environment. So sometimes I'm wondering if they're just doing the old copy and paste with their reports. And they're like, here's a report for you. And it's, someone that they ransomed in previous, months or a previous encounter. And I do think, that debate on whether or not to pay, that's a tough one. And I think we know where we need to get to, but getting everybody on board to do it, that is going to be a real challenge right there.
Brett, let's go back to the policy general topic. You already had something to say. Go for it.
Yeah, you mentioned ransom chats, and I think that is a great resource. Far too much of ransomware response happens in the shadows. It's compartmentalized, it's wrapped up in attorney-client privileges, disclosures, the messages massaged by PR firms. Organizations go to great lengths to conceal their incidents, to conceal why they happened, to conceal every aspect of the incident. And we need to find ways to change that. We need to drag these things out into the open so that everybody can benefit from that knowledge. Negotiators, we need far more visibility into what they do. That industry possibly needs to be regulated. And they are firms that can send large sums of money anywhere in the world with very little oversight. That needs to change. We need to know what they're doing. We need to know how the negotiations take place.
I think it's important, and I was remiss not to mention this, and I apologize. Thank you, Mary, for bringing it up, and Brett for following up on that. When we were referencing speaking with the threat actors, I definitely don't mean just a group, a victim organization or entity going out and saying, hey, how you doing? These threat actors are, bear with me, very skilled at the art of mental manipulation. And at the same time, it may be that they're just really not skilled. They just don't care. And they go for the throat. And it is an ugly situation. Many firms who offer negotiating services, and if you have, for example, cybersecurity insurance, then you would go through them. They would provide you with a particular group to facilitate those communications. And those groups are really, really good at reading the room, if you will, and understanding what to actually say and what not to say, absolutely not to say. And of course, anything that is stated in any way, shape, or form when communicating with a threat actor, consider that public. I said, oh, it's privatized now. Well, hold on. If you say something silly like, well, we only have so-and-so money, but that's because the company was going to sell this next week, but no one knows about it. Don't because they will just leverage that and then hold that over your head, as a ransom. So wanted to make that clear. As far as policy, I find that even when we have stronger policies in terms of just say technical policies for the inside of the house, if you will, we will not have RDP facing the internet exposed. Or if we do, it'll be locked down by a firewall rule that specifically states the following: the accounts that can be used, the IPs that can be egress from, and these things, right? That's great to have policy on paper. Like, that's cute. We say paper, there's not really on paper anymore these days. You can have a policy, but following that policy and a technical ability to restrict or to maintain adherence to the policy, that's important. Just on the technical side. And then you have the non-technical side. Brett, what are your thoughts on organizations who say we implement some of these abilities or restrict some of these abilities to pay, but yet folks just go, well, that's just another $100,000 fine. I'm already paying $7 million. Might as well just pay it, kind of thing. What are your general thoughts on some of those?
I don't think that's a particularly valid argument for restricting ransom payments. We have laws, and those laws gets broken. We don't not have laws because we know they're going to be broken, and the same thing comes into play with regards to any restriction we were to place on ransom payments. Some companies would ignore the law, most wouldn't.
I like that. On top of that, anyone who does, should additional restrictions come into play, who does ignore and break the law, again, keep in mind, you are interacting with criminals, right? I mean, going back from the old school kidnapping that really started getting big in the 70s and 80s kind of thing for international travel, you pay someone extortion fees. What can you expect in the future? To pay additional extortion fees, right? So if you were to break that rule and you were to make those payments, then you could be, oh, by the way, now we're just going to tell them that you paid us. So you got to pay us again. And who wants to deal with all that? So we have a couple minutes left. Brett, we really appreciate you coming on the show. If you would like to just kind of have a little platform here, what would you like folks to know about you, about what you've got going on, anything coming up, in your schedule, your dance card, what you got going on?
Very little, actually, at this point in time, and I have nothing particularly interesting scheduled at all for the next few months, which actually makes a fairly nice change. I will be able to hopefully relax.
Knock on wood. Shouldn't have said it. People are going to ping you after this now and be like, you want a keynote for us? You're going to be like, oh, all right. I said I was free. You go, I'm busy. I'm super busy. That's not what you told Mary and Ryan. That's not what you told Mary and Ryan. Okay, we have in the chat flowing since we began to connect with Brett on X. I'm still not used to X. I'm like, what's X? Oh, the old Twitter. That's right. Brett at Brett Callow, and then on LinkedIn, basically Brett Callow. So it's on the in the chat there for folks that are watching. Brett, any final words?
No, I'd simply like to say thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Awesome. It was great to have you. Really appreciate you. And I will follow up with you. Mary, what do you have going on? Anything? I guess you already mentioned. What's your class coming up soon? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I will be out in Florida, which is, very humid compared to being out here in Arizona. And I know I saw a couple of people that are out here, so I know you're going to feel my pain. And then I'm going on a cruise for Christmas. So this will be my first time not being at home over Christmas, and I'm going to be on a cruise. And if you've ever taken any of my classes, I love playing bingo. So I'm looking forward to going to playing bingo on a cruise over the holidays.
Very cool. All right. Thank you. So both of you, much appreciated. Very, very much appreciated. We are now going to take a moment to hear from the Share the Mic in Cyber initiative with Nelson and Dushima. So we're going to pull that onto the stage, and I will flip to the background.
Hi everyone, this is Lauren Zabrick, co-founder of the online social media movement Share the Mic in Cyber, which aims to uplift the voices and the work of Black cyber and privacy professionals. We are so grateful for our partnership with the SANS Institute, and together we are excited to bring you this segment featuring members of the Share the Mic in Cyber community for Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Enjoy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Doshima Dapoyewole. I am a cybersecurity policy fellow at the ITU and also a board member at ISACA. And I currently work on strengthening digital governance and providing opportunities for disadvantaged students to develop digital skills.
Hi, I'm Nelson Abbott, Senior Director for Advanced Program Operations at NPower. I oversee our cybersecurity and our cloud computing programs. NPower is a national workforce development organization that help to connect underserved, underrepresented populations and military-connected folks to technology careers. There's a lot of discussion points around workforce development, and particularly in the cybersecurity space. As we know, there's over 660,000 open cybersecurity jobs, and there's a lot of challenges and obstacles to overcome. And one of those is certification. So some stats that we have that we've compiled here at NPower, as you can see, is that cyber leaders really still value certifications, but they struggle to find certified and qualified talent. But interestingly enough, 90% of those leaders are also willing to pay for training. So what we suggest here at NPower from our perspective is, instead of spending extra money up front to get pre-certified talent that is going to be much more costly, consider re-evaluating your requirements for jobs and instead hiring for adaptability, learning capacity, problem solving, critical thinking, right? Many of those certifications people will come with may be outdated in 2-3 years because technology is always changing. So if you're willing to pay for training, find people that are trainable and easy to work with and are lifelong learners, and then you're also creating pathways for them to stay at your company and have upward mobility.
Absolutely. I agree with you, Nelson. So earlier this year, I wrote an article for the ISACA Journal, and I was looking at creative ways that, students or candidates from non-traditional backgrounds can fund their certifications journey. Because whether we like it or not, there are lots of debates about it, but certifications are here to stay. And I think something that a lot of people don't realize and companies forget sometimes is that acquiring the right certifications can be quite expensive. Exams can cost well over $1,000. You need to buy books. You need to go on a training course. So if we do want to see a diverse pool of candidates, some of these costs are just, really beyond their reach. And that's where one of the options that candidates can consider is looking for jobs that employers that are willing to fund these costs. So I think companies can do a lot more in being transparent about the training that they're able to offer, graduate schemes and apprenticeship schemes, and, just finding a way for, everyone to sort of meet each other halfway. Companies need candidates that are willing to go through these trainings, because some of these exams, like the CISSP, is like a 6-hour exam. You need someone who is willing to put themselves through the sort of torture to go through the training to be able to pass. And for people from disadvantaged or non-traditional backgrounds who might not necessarily know this, they just might not be aware that, hey, this is something that a company might be able to cover for me.
Absolutely. And my experience working with our trainees in those populations that you referenced is that they are hungry to learn, right? So it's not like they're going to come in, learn their job and just do that. They want to keep advancing and learning new skills. So if you provide that opportunity, people are going to grab it. And I think also too is that there's a lot of free options out there. Our training programs here at NPower, free of cost, no tuition involved, just the time and energy and dedication. And there's lots of other organizations like NPower that offer free or low cost training options as well.
Absolutely. I think aside organizations like yours, a lot of times people forget that you can actually earn some of these certifications in school. So things like looking at the course content for graduate degrees, even, courses that might be available at a community college, you might be able to pick up some credits that would be comparable with a lot of industry certifications. And a lot of times it comes at a reduced cost than, going to a training provider for, training. So that's something that, non-traditional candidates can also consider.
Absolutely. And on that point too, we have been developing a lot of articulation agreements with local community colleges where we have locations. I know some of our friendly competitors in the space like Perscolis also have articulation agreements. So whether you're in college earning a certification or if you're in a certification program, there is that option to get college credits for that certification work. NPower, we are a source of diverse, non-traditional, certified talent. So if you or your organization are looking for that certified talent for early and entry-level roles, whether it's infrastructure, cybersecurity, or cloud roles, feel free to reach out to us on our website. We also have a lot of resources that can help folks to make their hiring, onboarding, and retention practices more inclusive to diverse and non-traditional candidates.
Just to add to that, I would say that for both companies and candidates, you need to get creative about how you make yourself an attractive candidate or an attractive employer to, attract those applications from people who have, the soft skills that you may want that would complement the technical skills. If you are interested in creative ways that you can fund your certifications journey, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I share a lot of thought content about that, and also encourage you to join industry associations like ISACA. We also tend to share a lot of helpful information in the community as well.
So thanks again, everyone, for tuning in today. And if to learn more about some of the partnership opportunities and resources that I mentioned, please follow me on LinkedIn. You'll see the link below in the banner.
Thank you for listening to the Wait Just an Infosec podcast. Remember to join us live every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern for a new episode of Wait Just an Infosec. You can watch at SANS.org/WJAI or go to the SANS LinkedIn or YouTube channels. The Wait Just an Infosec podcast will be released every Wednesday at noon. Thanks for listening. See you next week.